Good afternoon, all. I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching the Sal Greco Show. Before anything, as usual, if you are watching us on YouTube, please hit the like, share, subscribe button. Hit that notification button if you can. Please support the Finest Unfiltered Network. Also, if you're on X, if you're watching us on X, hit the repost button also there. And, there's a lot going on. First and foremost on the agenda here, I give a shout out to the Executive Perspective yesterday. They had a show at 1705. It was great analysis. I hope everybody checks that out. Go to see on the Finest Unfiltered Network. You see Rob Layson and Rob Lukash. Great job yesterday. Also, of course, 805 Live, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, the Finest Unfiltered. And I want to really commend them yesterday. John and Eric had someone I had on, and he's also my friend. And I'm going to bring this up. Frank Morano, he's running for city council in Staten Island in District 51. And they did an excellent job with that. But I also wanted to state that there was something that he had mentioned. So he was supposed to do what would have been I guess it's like a debate, because there's three people running. It's not just him. And a primary, it's not even a primary. It's just an election. It's going to be an election where three people or one person's going to win the seat that was vacated by Joe Borelli, who was the city councilman. So it's going to be Frank, I think, Vito Fosella's son, and one other gentleman. So there it is. Cliff Hagan, Frank Morano, and Griffin Fosella. And this was supposed to be tonight at Privy, the catering hall in Staten Island. And this is supposed to be a candidate forum. Okay, but then something happened in between. All right. So we understand that these three people, again, I'm showing this on the screen on purpose, they're supposed to be doing this candidate forum, which is basically like a debate with all three candidates that are supposed to be in this election. Now, in this election, remember, this is straight up for the seat. It won't say Republican or Democrat or anything like that. But here we go, and here's my friend. This is John Tobacco on Instagram who posted this, all right? And if you look at this, this is a letter, I believe, that was written, and I'm just going to read this off basically what John Tobacco's saying here. So he said, just to be clear, let me recap. The Executive Club of Staten Island proposed a candidate forum with Staten Island Restaurant and Tavern Association at Privy and sent via email invitations to three candidates, which you saw on the screen. The Honorable Judge Stranieri was proposed to moderate. Then, without any further communication with Griffin Fosella for city council or team, a flyer was distributed suggesting all three were attending. Other folks on social media took that and started to manipulate it to one candidate is afraid to come. Petty, silly political gamesmanship, unnecessary, but not surprising. Since then, the original moderator has dropped out, and I believe now, as you say on the bottom, I think they're trying to find another location, and it's becoming a mess. See, and then now look, the original organized executive club has stepped away as well. Now one organization has taken over, and a new moderator has been appointed. Jim Bratney from Jimmy Max is now the moderator. The exec club even admitted there was a screw up, miscommunication, apologized. I'm wondering if anyone has heard from the organizer about, as the executive club stated, this potential event. I called and tested the organizer to see if there would be a new date proposed. I haven't heard back. So, folks, this is, I don't know. You want to call this dirty tricks? I don't know what the hell they're trying to do there in Staten Island. I'd rather stay conservative here because, there is one candidate that is in this race, apparently backed by John Katsimatidis, another guy I know, but they never have a debate. And I understand this, and I got this on very good authority and good sources here, that there's going to be about $200,000 dumped in negative ads on Frank Morano from now, probably by the end of the week, till April 29th, which is the date of the election for the city council seat. And remember, this is just for the council seat for that moment. And then the primary would be in June, because the real election is in November. But also, it's going to be with the mayor election and everything that's going on in November. So, folks, yesterday was a big deal to have Frank Morano on the Finest Unfiltered. And just so everyone knows, I'm going to re-clarify what I said. What I'm trying to state on the previous show was that us as a network, we don't bend a knee to the Joe Cops of the world, the critics, the people that say who you have on, why do you have on. This is an open platform. It's a place where forum for everybody because you need everyone's point of view. So there is no friction between anybody. John and Eric and Marlon and Ron and Rob, they're like my brothers. As you know, maybe it may not be like that anymore in the police department today, but when we were on it, we were all like brothers, especially when it's a tight-knit group. So when I reference that, that's what I'm referencing because they did an excellent job. I applaud them. And remember, it is the Finest Unfiltered that had other candidates for office. And what they're doing is changing the game because now on a platform like this, in the long-form platform, you're hearing different ideas and different thoughts and what you are to be expected from your political candidates in office. It can't just be the same theme all the time. So as much as people want to say things, that's what I'm referencing it. We don't bend the knee to what people say, critics, the comments. We're an open platform for everyone and all because everyone's opinion should matter. So now the next thing I want to touch up on is, looks like Congress once again is asking questions about that FEMA money that New York City is now looking for, right? From FEMA. This was another Eric Adams ploy who says, I'm going to sue the federal government for that money back. So right here, this is the headline: possible illegal use of $81 million in FEMA funds for New York City migrant stays and hotels, probed by House GOP chair. Now, he also is probing the other mayors that you had seen at that hearing that was a couple of weeks ago, where it's the mayor from Boston, the mayor from Denver, the mayor of Chicago. But I like to reiterate, New York City spent close to $7 billion in this. Just New York City alone. Chicago and Boston and Denver combined don't even make $1 billion. Maybe a couple of $100 million in it, which is still a waste of money, and we need to know what exactly occurred there. But why is Eric Adams being held to a different standard when it comes to this? Because $7 billion, well, we know what's going on, right? What's that? Where's my crumbs comment from Tim Pearson come from? You know, remember the guy that's being investigated for this kind of stuff? And right here, this is from the article itself. The $80 million that FEMA approved, paid, and then rescinded is the bare minimum our taxpayers deserve, and we will continue to work to ensure our city's residents get every dollar that they are owed. We are reviewing the letter. You see, this is very important because the amount of waste and abuse, we can't just say, oh, now he's the blue MAGA mayor and all this stuff. There needs to be an accountability. There has to be. You can't just forget about things and say, we're going to move forward. So this is what I like to highlight. Congress is supposed to hold these people accountable. So you start with New York City because $7 billion was used, and they always reference the Roosevelt Hotel. There's another hotel, the Walcott, that had a lot of stuff going on there. And I think these kind of things, we need to find out what was really going on. This happened for almost 4 years. Right here, look, the migrant crisis has cost the city nearly $7 billion over the last 3 years, according to Adams administration officials. It's right there, you know. And Biden administration approved $650 million for Big Apple's shelter program in fiscal year 2024. And again, it says how they're also, it mentions here, Green sent the letter to the other sanctuary city leaders. So that's the mayor, like I said, Boston, LA, request similar documentation. Their misuse of $25.7 million and $21.8 million, respectively, from the FEMA program. But Eric Adams has $7 billion. Why are we just ignoring this? Now, I know there's another thing, too, just a side note to this. I heard that Cass Dawdry, there was an executive order given. He's the deputy mayor of public safety. I mean, this guy, I can't believe the rocket fuel promotion this guy has, as Eric Dim likes to coin. He has now got an executive order that states that he's in charge of like 10 other agencies that he wasn't supposed to be in charge of as the deputy mayor of public safety. But one of them I'm going to highlight in particular because it said it's the Parks Department. Now, remember, the Woolman Rink and the golf course in the Bronx that's run by Bally's right now, they both had Trump's name. They're up for review right now to try to get a different owner or a different person on there again. So Kaz Dordry now being in charge would be the buffer, because obviously, and here it is, look at this trajectory of this guy. I mean, look at this. Deputy commissioner, this is rocket fuel. 1 year, 8 months. The detective, which I don't know if this guy even made his own arrests. He made it to first grade detective overnight, despite all the negatives and mishegas this guy's involved in, investigations and lawsuits. But him being the buffer now, Trump's trying to get this name back on the Woolman Rink. And I think they mistakenly took his name off in 2021 using the riots from the January 6th stuff. He's right to try to get that back. But it doesn't look good when Eric Adams, who's been under fire under his criminal investigation and how this whole thing was handled, and now Kaz Dordry is the head of Parks Department and it's got to approve this. And we already have articles from the city that shows that there's a whole thing that happened with that. So I don't know what that's about, other than to point at Kaz Dordry seems to now be the buffer if anything suspicious happens with the Woolman Rink and the golf course in regards to Trump getting his name back. There's another company, I think they tried to put a bid in. They were given a gift, and the deputy mayor's resigned. So pay attention to that one, because that guy is Eric Adams' heir apparent. You know, and right here, EC says Kaz has some comp with that other kid with 3 years making second grade. Yeah, it's this guy is really, I don't know what to say, but I find that one a little odd. But now that we're speaking about all this stuff, there's one person in this whole equation. I've brought her up numerous times, and in fact, Sam Antar at Sam Antar, whitecollarfraud.com. We've had him on the show previously. He started an entire expose about Letitia James, who's the Attorney General of the state, and she has, she's overvaluated her properties, and there's a lot of stuff he's uncovered. And, I love the guy. I think he's great. And if you keep going to whitecollarfraud.com and also follow him on X at Sam Antar, you'll learn a lot more than that. He's very good with all this stuff. But I'm going to give that as the preview to who I'm having on today. So today I'm going to have on filmmaker, journalist, and political commentator Joel Gilbert. And Joel has his own expose that he did recently on Letitia James. It was in the Gateway Pundit, and it's got a lot to do with mortgage fraud. It's really crazy stuff, and really it's time to start. Someone in the DOJ has to look into this and investigate this woman. So, Joel, welcome to the Sal Greco Show. Thanks for coming on today.
Okay, Sal, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. And I was reading your expose you had in the Gateway Pundit, and it mentioned the first thing that came off is about this mortgage fraud. And it says Letitia James, she is the Attorney General of New York State. So walk us through what you have and what you uncovered here, because this is truly unbelievable.
Okay, well, in the past week, I've actually had 3 articles on the Gateway Pundit, and they're calling it the Letitia Files, because it's kind of karma has come around after Letitia investigated President Trump and charged him with crimes that were pretty much made up somehow, that the successful loans that he took out from banks over many years and paid back, and no one ever complained and no one was ever hurt, everyone was repaid, that somehow she felt he had undervalued his properties, which didn't make any sense at all from a real estate point of view. The banks actually are in charge of making their own appraisals, and they do not rely on valuations that are estimated by customers like Trump anyway. So now it turns out, when we take a closer look at Letitia James, which I did because I started out by looking at Sam Antar's website called whitecollarfraud.com. He'd done a tremendous amount of research and inspired me to look a little closer. And what's nice about New York State is just about everything is online. It's kind of an open record state, and you can use Acris and other websites of the city government and pretty much download anything you want. Now, it does take a lot of reading and a lot of research, and you have to know something about business and real estate to be able to identify things. So the first thing I identified is that Letitia James purchased in 2001 the 4-story multifamily apartment building at 296 Lafayette Avenue, and that is public record, in Brooklyn. Now, it's 5 apartments are in that building. She lives in one of the apartments and she rents out the other 4. It's a 5-unit building, and very significant, which we'll talk about, the certificate of occupancy, which you have on the screen, at the City of New York Department of Buildings is the official legal designation of how many apartment units are in that building. It's in the certificate of occupancy. You cannot combine units or break up units and say you have a different number of units. It has to be legally designated, approved, and if you ever do a legal change to your apartment building in terms of the number of units, the city will come out and do a new certificate of occupancy. So the 2001 certificate of occupancy says that there's 5 apartments. Now, I noticed that Letitia, for 20 years, has been refinancing her original loan of $550,000 when she bought the building. And every time she refinances, she tells the lender that she only has 4 units in the building. Now, this might seem like a small, insignificant thing, but it's not, because when you have 4 units or less, you're designated as a residential loan and you have lower interest rates. If you have 5 apartments or more, it's going to be higher interest rates as a commercial loan. So right away, I saw that she's done a number of loans and always falsely claims that her building has 4 units. Now, the most significant of these loans happened to be, if you fast forward to 2011, because she did a refinance in 2005. She refinanced on an adjustable loan that started at 7.2% and had a ceiling of 10.2. So from 2005 to 2011, remember, the mortgage rates went up. So she was probably paying closer to 10% by 2011. Now, what does she do in 2011? She applies to the U.S. government for, they had TARP. You might remember TARP. It's called a HAMP loan. It's Making Home Affordable Program, HAMP loan, that she took out. She applied for a loan with the U.S. Department of Treasury under TARP program. Now, the TARP program was meant to help homeowners if you had 1 house or you had a total of maximum 4 units. It was only eligible to get a HAMP loan through the TARP program if you had 4 units or less. And the reason for that is they wanted to help small homeowners. They weren't trying to help businesses and multifamily apartment buildings. So sure enough, on her application, like she did for her other loans, Letitia applies for this HAMP loan from the federal government, and she claims she only has 4 units, even though the certificate of occupancy says it's 5. Now, the new interest rate would be 2.7%. So she wanted to reduce her interest rate from 10% to 2.7, saving like $40,000 a year on the back of the American taxpayer. So she applies for this loan by falsifying the loan documents, which are online, claims she only has 4 units in her building, even though she has 5. She also makes a hardship claim, because in the regulations for the HAMP loan, you have to certify you have a financial hardship. Now, that's also very suspect for Letitia, because she was making $126,000 a year in 2011. That's $10,000 a month. And she claimed in this hardship claim in the application that she couldn't afford to pay her loan and she had no way of paying it in the future. Now, as a single woman with no children, who's also getting rental income, that probably had another $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a year from rental income on top of the $127,000. So it appears her hardship claim may also have been false. So she gets the 2.7% loan, and I looked it up, and it's under the jurisdiction of the Department of Treasury. Now, if someone were to take her other 5 refinance loans where she falsified the number of units to the state of New York Attorney General's office and said, hey, the Attorney General, her building looks like a crime scene. She keeps committing mortgage fraud crimes. Would you look into this? They probably wouldn't do it, because Letitia James is the Attorney General right now. So the HAMP loan under the TARP program is the most interesting, because the federal government, Department of Treasury, Department of Justice, they can look into it And I believe there's solid evidence that I put out there on my Gateway Pundit article with all the links. Anybody can look up the links, that she did commit mortgage fraud. And it is absolutely illegal to falsify your mortgage documents to get a benefit, to get a lower rate. Now, we know that Letitia James is a warrior for mortgage fraud. She clearly always says, you can't take advantage of the system. No one is above the law. So I believe she certainly should be investigated by the Department of Treasury. And if you look at these documents, even you're showing as we speak, I think it's an open and shut case that Letitia James committed mortgage fraud.
Now, that mortgage fraud would be, obviously, she still owns this property, correct?
Yeah, she still owns it. It's a 5-unit multifamily apartment building. She rents, I think, at least one unit now to one of her relatives. She has other people living there. She said in other documents that she makes as much as $50,000 a year in rentals. So she clearly did not qualify for the government HAMP loan, not, number one, because it wasn't eligible if you had more than 4 units. And number two, I think she lied when she claimed a hardship that she couldn't afford her mortgage, because she was probably making $170,000 a year. So there's several reasons that she took advantage of the system to get the American taxpayer to subsidize her apartment building.
There's actually somebody stated in here, I don't know if it's true, but they did state, they said that she owns the property next door too. So that would be something just to know that, on her government salary, how she can afford all these things. This would lead into something, because you're saying with this kind of mortgage fraud, that's where she's making her money and doing all her little side projects. Because $40,000, especially back then, if you go over the years, especially because things inflate, how much does she really have under the mattress here with everything? Because she's making an income, right, on the rentals, and she's taking out on the loans and saying, oh, hardship. This doesn't.
Well, I'll clarify for you. She made $126,000 a year from being on city council. That was her salary. Then she got as much as $50,000 in rentals. So probably around $175,000 a year was her income. And she claimed on her HAMP application, she swore in a sworn statement that which is illegal to do, to get a loan by making false income claims. She also falsified the number of units in her property. It's very much cut and dry. And I think she has to answer for it. I'd like to see the New York media and other media pick up on this, because the hypocrisy is just breathtaking. How could she prosecute President Trump, a successful business that took legitimate loans, claiming that somehow he had inflated his or devalued his properties years ago, when there was no complainant and no injured party? Clearly, in Letitia's case for 296 Lafayette Avenue, the injured party is the American taxpayer, had to subsidize her mortgage so that she could make more money off of her rental income.
I see right here, this EC says, but she had owned it. It was her main residence before she got the building built from the bottom up. Because that's
not correct. No. She bought a building that was over 100 years old, and it had 5 units in it. She was domiciled in 1 unit, and she rented out the other 4 units. So that's all cut and dry fact. We had over 1,500 comments on the article in the Gateway Pundit. The comments were pretty much, "Ain't karma a bitch? Send the FBI to raid her house immediately." That kind of thing. Because that's how Letitia and others in the Democrat Party treated President Trump. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to hold him up in court. They tried to put him in jail. Reminiscent of a police state, socialist police state. That's what they do, because the background is that socialism does not work as a economic system. So that's why socialist governments have to use force to imprison their opponents, prevent fair elections, because they know no one would ever vote for socialism because it does not work. And Letitia was a key person trying to persecute President Trump on bogus charges.
I agree with you. I saw that whole case. There was a lot of holes there. But, as an attorney general in New York, and she's in the New York courtroom, she just presents case. She can do whatever she wants. I mean, she has like carte blanche there. But when you mention this also, just so people know, when you're a civil servant, public servant, to get a loan also, she's not walking in as Letitia James. You know, they give you, there's programs, I don't know if they do it for elected official, but these like they give, they'll give you a reduced rate if you're military, right? But they'll say police fall on that banner. But also elected official, wouldn't they be able to try to coax that too? Because walking in, it's not Letitia James, it's Councilwoman Letitia James.
This was a federal loan under the TARP program. I remember TARP.
TARP program.
They were trying to help out small, family homeowners who had gotten into those adjustable mortgages, but it was not intended for, and it was not eligible if you had 5 apartments or more. So she clearly, falsified her loan document, which is a crime, and falsified her income claims as well. So those are things that have to be looked at. Compared to what Trump did, this is real crime.
There's even more to that, because I think you wrote something else, correct? And there was more that you uncovered with her.
That's right. So the next thing I looked at was going way back to 1983. Letitia James is only 24 years old. She graduated from Lehman College in the Bronx in 1981. And so in 1983, she still hasn't started law school. She won't go to law school for another year and a half at Howard University in Washington, D.C. She's living with her parents and 8 siblings in Brooklyn. And lo and behold, I look at her very first mortgage document, which is online under Acris. Anyone can pull it up. And sure enough, she has taken out a loan for $30,000 to buy a small 888 square foot 2-story townhouse in Queens. Now, I look at this loan document, and again, she's 24 years old, probably doesn't have a job. Or if she does, she's working at McDonald's or something. Clearly not somebody that can qualify to get a mortgage to buy a home. So there we are on a mortgage document showing that Letitia James and Robert James, her father, take out a mortgage as husband and wife. Husband and wife. Now that's the deed. You're flashing the deed there. Now on the deed, they put Robert James and Letitia James, his daughter, so that the ownership properly reflects the relationship on the deed. And that would be important for them because her father was getting older and actually died only 3 years later. But on the mortgage document that I'm holding here, it says Robert James and Letitia James, his wife. You can probably put that up. There you go. You can put that up. So it is absolutely illegal for a father and daughter to falsely represent themselves as husband and wife to obtain a loan. This is mortgage fraud. It's a serious offense. People do it all the time. It's called false representation, and it's providing any misleading or false information on a loan application, including misrepresenting a relationship to qualify. So lying about marriage status to get better loan terms or to get a loan is mortgage fraud, and the punishment includes fines and even imprisonment. So this was the beginning of her career in mortgage fraud. And as I said, that house, her mortgage history is becoming a crime scene. So about 6 months later, the lender called Cadillac Limited, they actually assigned that loan to another company. And again, they were listed as husband and wife. And fast forward to 2000, when they sold the property, same thing. They sold it as Letitia James and Robert James, husband and wife. So it was no, clerical error. I think they did it on purpose so that Letitia could get the mortgage. And again, as Letitia James always says, you cannot abuse the system. You can't, use taxpayers, and you can't abuse loan companies. No one is above the law. So I think Letitia James, in light of these revelations, certainly should consider resigning, because how can she enforce the law as New York State Attorney General and at the same time having a history of mortgage fraud crime in her own mortgage practices?
I would say this. I know people, being, prior law enforcement, they were white collar crimes that they had to make arrests for mortgage fraud, especially special agents, FBI, stuff like that. This is a troubling thing. And you got people in the comments. Here, Rob Lukash says, "Thank you, Sal and Joel, for reporting on Letitia James. Can't imagine that the top attorney should be getting away with these crimes." Rob is a retired executive, by the way. He's got a show on there, Executive Perspective. They have some of his comments. People, what's her name says, "I'm so glad I'm here, Sal. I didn't know any of this," because this is the biggest problem, that people they don't know about this stuff, Joel. They want to shield her. That's probably part of the problem here.
Well, look, what's interesting is because New York State is an open record state, you can literally go online and download this stuff. So it's just amazing to me. I live here in California. Anyone can do what I did. Sam Antar has done a lot of work on it. And there's just so much stuff on her, especially the campaign stuff, which we'll talk about in a minute, was my third article. But it's all there. You just have to download all these documents. Some of them are 26 pages long, and you got to read them. And the key to doing research, I'll tell you, is this. When you do research, you have to understand that you don't know what you're looking for. I had no way of saying, I would like to find out if Letitia James married her father and if they took out a loan together. I never would have thought of that. So I just said, let me go and read every single document online that has to do with Letitia James and mortgages. And simply reading them one by one, I uncovered this fraud. No one would ever think to look for it because it's so bizarre, and you wouldn't be familiar with someone saying, well, I'm married to my father, give me a loan. But that's what Letitia James did, and that's how I was able to uncover it.
All right, and I have another comment here from Logic's Finest. If two parties in a contract arrangement agree on a price or valuation, there is no fraud of any kind. New York Court of Appeals justices. Tish James lied because she has a history of that. You're proving this, and so with this part alone, these two things you've unraveled here, how can an investigation start? Has anyone reached out to you? Is anybody saying anything as far as Justice Department goes? Because I think this is a huge revelation that needs to be looked at.
I think President Trump, when he took office, he made it understood to his Justice Department and other agencies that he expects to hold accountable the people that abused the system, the people that weaponized government, and they would be looked at. They had their security clearances. Some of them were taken away. I think Letitia James was charged for some other crime by the DOJ. So Trump has certainly given the instructions that any of these people that were committing lawfare, using the legal system to harass and unfairly victimize himself and Republicans, these people would be seriously looked at for any crimes they may have committed. In the case of Letitia James, I think I've revealed that there is a crime, and it falls under the purview of the Department of Justice. You don't have to, the Treasury Department for enforcement. So you don't have to go to Letitia James' office and say, could you please prosecute or investigate Letitia James? They'll look at you like you're crazy and won't do it. So that's why the HAMP loan out of the TARP program is the one that I think they should be looking at. And as far as her pretending to marry her father to get that loan back in 1983, I don't know who would look into that, if it's a statute of limitations. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I think it does deserve to be looked at as well.
I would say if she became an elected official. And just before I let you chime in on the last part of this, Ron Layson says right here in response to what Logic's Finest had stated. Ron Layson also has a show here again, Executive Perspective. He's another former executive in NYPD, and this matters when he says something, because right here he says it isn't even about the valuation; it's the fraudulently obtained loans. See, people need to pay attention to that. The fraudulently obtained loans. This is a woman who was a city councilwoman and then became the Attorney General of the state of New York. So this isn't at ends, though, here, Joel. You have another part of this, right? You said the campaign finances.
Well, we've looked at two instances of mortgage fraud. And if you look at those links on Gateway Pundit, it's called the Letitia Files, and it's all linked. I have a hard time understanding how she could not be prosecuted. But I did take a look at her campaign finance activity, which is also available online, to look for any anomalies. And sure enough, I found that there is a 501c4 called New York Communities for Change. That's their website page. But the New York Communities for Change is a 501c4. Now, let me tell you the difference first between a 501c4 and 501c3. And what Letitia did is her campaign actually hired New York Communities for Change and paid them for things like campaign workers, canvassing, staffing, rent, phone. She hired this nonprofit to do campaign activities. Now, a 501c3, people are mostly familiar with, cannot engage in any political activity whatsoever, like a church or a pure, advocacy organization. 501c3, you cannot have anything to do with politics. Now, 501c4 is what New York Communities for Change was and is, and that's known as a social welfare nonprofit. So it's a nonprofit for social welfare. Now, they can engage in some very limited political activities. For instance, they can post things online if they want, but they can't really align with one candidate. They can't coordinate with one candidate or one political campaign. Coordination for a nonprofit is illegal. So a C4 can do some political activities. You can hold you can have a meeting and invite a politician to speak at your meeting. So you can have some political things, but you cannot coordinate with a campaign. So Letitia clearly hired this company, this nonprofit, for canvassing, campaign workers, staffing, phone, rent, staff. You can't do that. That's coordinating with the campaign. So I've highlighted that in my third article because I think Letitia brazenly violated the campaign laws by hiring a nonprofit that maybe was sympathetic to her, but you can't hire them to do campaign work because that's coordination. So that's another area that I think the authorities should look at. She did it in 2013. She never did it again. Maybe she was told, you can't do that. But campaigns in the United States steer clear of 501c3s and C4s because it would be coordination. So that's another important revelation I think I made, that Letitia James just brazenly has disregard for the law, for mortgage law, for campaign law, to seek an advantage for herself, to save money on her mortgages, to get mortgages on the back of the American taxpayer, and to abuse the sympathetic nonprofits that might be sympathetic to her by getting them to work on her campaign, which is not legal.
Yeah, I know that's 100% illegal. And if it was done once, it's still illegal. Otherwise, we have all these people that they've investigated for campaign finance crimes. Bob Menendez, the latest that was actually convicted. You've had Eric Adams, and now there's always been rumors of Letitia James. I'll tell you, from her days back in city council and it ran for public advocate there. So, and just to clarify, Logic's Finest states this, just so you know, he said, everyone, I was pointing out Tish James and her case against Trump, given that she did undertake the crime that she accused Trump of doing, which he did not. If I wasn't clear, apologies. So just so you know, Joel. But again, I think you're pointing out this in itself. Each one of your sayings actually needs to be looked at. You got the Treasury Department, and then you also have the DOJ, because this would fall into a federal. This is a campaign finance crime. What she did, with having a non, that shouldn't have. I don't know if it goes on today, but I definitely know that's a big no-no in New York City.
I've never heard of it. Campaigns do not hire 501c3s or C4s because they're nonprofits. In the case of C4, they can do very, very limited political activities, but they cannot be hired. Their offices, their workers become campaign canvassers and phones and rent and all the things she used them for is absolutely not legal. And Tish James did it. I mean, she was a lawyer at the time. She's been to law school. She definitely knew better, but she did it anyway because she wanted to get elected to public advocate, and she thought it would give her an advantage. So you can see that Tish James breaks the law, in my opinion, looking at the evidence, to get a financial advantage or an advantage for a campaign. And then, of course, the hypocrisy is just incredible, how she prosecuted Trump for something that wasn't even a crime, making up mortgage fraud where it didn't exist.
Yeah. And I was going to add something to all of this because you've unraveled, you've laid out a blueprint here of white collar fraud, you and Sam Mantar. But during this period, I don't know if you noticed, she used to go to this place, and it was a Democrat hangout. It was in the Bronx, and people who watch this show know it. Was called Conso Frito, and it was owned by the police commissioner at the time, the NYPD's brother, Richard Caban. And there she is, pictured with this guy they say is the manager. His name is Jimmy Rodriguez. He's a self-admitted criminal and a mob associate, okay, of the Lucchese crime family. He's owned numerous other establishments. Jimmy's Cafe comes to mind. It was known to be, there's everything you could think of that shouldn't be happening is happening there. He's been in and out of trouble, but he is connected to the Clintons. Hillary Clinton, when she ran for the Senate in New York State, announced it in front of his laundromat, and his partner there ended up getting indicted like a couple of days later for some other felonious crime. And of course, Tish James is also associated with her. Now, not to make it a guilt by association thing, but Conso Frito plays here because this was a place that every bigwig in the police department and New York Democratic Party shows up there. You've had people like Tish James being the head person, Darcel Clark, the Bronx district attorney. She had numerous fundraisers there. Corrine Reyes, an assemblywoman, fundraisers there. And you know what it is, Joel? Every time there's a fundraiser and there's something about money, she's there. Tish James shows up, but she's associated with this gentleman. But here's the kicker. So this place that's owned by the police commissioner's brother, and he's the manager of this place, Jimmy Rodriguez, there's all these allegations coming out of there. So we come to find out that in 2021, there was an incident there. And this incident that occurred leads up to some report, and I posted it when I had the documents of a report that was given to the human trafficking unit from a cop, from someone in the precinct, reported to the human trafficking unit of an incident that occurred there. Now, when you start hearing that, right, and nothing happens other than this was reported and we don't know about any investigation, there's also reports of they didn't have their own problems with the certificate. There it is right there. That's their actual report that was given because these records were given from the state liquor authority. They had a liquor license. They shouldn't even have a liquor license. Joel, they also had no permit for their party shed. They had a shed that was a fire trap. It was not certified by the buildings department, and they partied there for 4 years until it was finally shut down because it was just a litany of issues there. And there's so many allegations, the top one being that rare report of human trafficking. Nothing ever happens there, Joel. I don't know why. It was because of the police commissioner, the mayor, but her presence there, remember, she's the top law enforcement official. What the hell is she doing in this place with these people all the time and associated with a mob associate, Joel? Oh, same guy that just so happens to know the same people she does. And she's been, as now you have uncovered, scheming prior to this that we didn't even know about. We're going way back when she first started. This is very troubling, Joel. I just want to point out all the things that she's involved in. It's a lot of impropriety. The appearance of impropriety is tremendous here, Joel.
Well, you mentioned stories, and those go on for years of possible improprieties that never really get investigated. I think what I presented is actual hard evidence. It's online. Anybody can go and see it. You've shown the documents. It's in my articles, and it clearly fits the definition of mortgage fraud crime. And Letitia James, the temptation was there. She was paying about 10% for her mortgage, and she saw the federal government was offering 2.7%. And all you had to do was lie about the number of units in your building and lie about your income, and she did it. And she made a ton of money off American taxpayers and abused the system, the very thing that she claims that she's against people doing and that she's a warrior against any kind of mortgage fraud. And we remember she always says no one is above the law. So I would like to see an investigation on this mortgage fraud that I have raised in these articles.
I agree with you, Joel. I think that this clearly needs a much closer look, definitely from an investigative body. This has been a great work. But, I'm thinking what you've uncovered, some of it doesn't surprise me, because the other figure that frequented in that nightclub and she came up with through political circles, Carl Hasty. If you looked into him, I'm sure there might be some other improprieties going on with him.
All right, before we go, let me plug my new movie. It's called The Climate According to AI Al Gore. And what I did is I blew the lid off the entire climate hoax, the whole climate emergency hoax, by going and investigating Al Gore. I was actually an intern for Al Gore when he was a U.S. Senator from Tennessee, myself being from Tennessee. And I got to know him a little bit when he was a senator. And Al Gore presented to the world in 1992. He presented this climate theory called in his book, Earth in the Balance. And that's when he first presented it to the world and said, hey, there's too much carbon dioxide. We're all going to die. There's an apocalypse coming. And he said at the time, he admitted he was no scientist. He said, I'm no scientist, but I got all this information. Don't worry, I got it from my Harvard professor. So what I did is I went and looked at the class that Gore took at Harvard from his professor, Roger Revelle, when I looked at the papers of this professor, and I discovered that, number one, the class he took was called Human Populations. It had nothing to do with the climate, and Gore gets a C in the class. I look at the writings of his professor for 30 years, and his professor completely disagrees with everything Gore is saying about a climate apocalypse, about carbon dioxide. So I realized, I said, wait a minute, where did Gore get this apocalypse from? And I looked at his studies at Divinity School. Gore went to Divinity School in 1971 to get out of the Vietnam War. He was in Vietnam for just 4 months as a journalist, and you can get out of Vietnam if you apply to a Divinity School. So he did that after 4 months. He went to Divinity School. It was like this draft dodger's haven at Vanderbilt. And they had these radical environmental professors. And I found this book on his reading list called Our Plundered Planet. And it turns out I read this book, and I think I showed that Gore plagiarized it completely to come up with his book, Earth in the Balance. So Gore in 1992, he couldn't say, I've got a climate apocalypse, believe what I'm saying because I got it out of Harvard. He had to secularize. If he said, I got this from my wacky professors and I copied a 1940s book about how the planet is going to die, no one would have taken him seriously. So I think I looked at the godfather of climate politics, and I showed that Gore just made it up. So it's an important film. You can go to climatealgore.com. That's climatealgore.com. You can watch the trailer and live stream the film.
Oh, that's great work. For folks who don't know, Joel is a filmmaker. He's done plenty of work in the past also, so you could check out his work. Yeah. Well, where could people see what you actually, or, your past work and what you're doing now?
I've made films on the Trayvon Martin case, the George Zimmerman trial. I blew the lid off of that. They used a fake witness. I made a movie about Michelle Obama. People know me about from my film Dreams from My Real Father, about Barack Obama's real father named Frank Marshall Davis that raised him in Hawaii. Obama's father was not the Kenyan student. It was this American communist that raised him. I've made a number of films. There's No Place Like Utopia, films about the Middle East politics, Trump, the Art of the Insult. I have a new film coming out also in June with Roseanne Barr called Roseanne Barr is America. So that's going to be an exciting film to see. So if you go to Highway 61ENT for entertainment, highway61ENT.com, you can see all my films listed there.
That was great work, Joel. And you're also like me. You're fact-based. You presented a ton of evidence. You always do in all your documentaries and all your work. I applaud your work. I really hope that, again, someone in an investigative agency takes a really close look at this, because it's very disturbing, this pattern of impropriety we have here, or alleged crimes that may have occurred or could be even worse. We don't know yet, because no one ever seems to want to make a move on things, but they're quick to say Trump is a bad guy, or this, or friend Roger is a bad guy, but not Tish James. You can't touch her. And I think you just mentioned the Al Gore thing. The mantra of today is also that the Clintons seem to be hanging around in the background. They're almost there, like on a shoulder.
Okay, we covered a lot. I appreciate your having me, and let's do it again. I'm still looking into Letitia James, and I expect the Letitia files to continue.
That's right, Joel. Oh, and so people can go to Gateway Pundit, correct? The gatewaypundit.com.
Gatewaypundit.com. You can also read my articles on my Twitter. It's Joel S. Gilbert. Joel S. Gilbert at Joel S. Gilbert. You can see all the articles. Roger Stone's also posting them, as well as Sam Antar. So absolutely, there'll be more on Gateway Pundit to keep up with the Letitia files. And maybe if an investigation starts by the federal government, it'll really explode in the national media. That's what I'm hoping.
That's the point. But you know what, Joel, like they say, long form shows like this, long form podcast, that's what people come to hear, things like this. And then it just explodes because unfortunately, Fox and all these other companies, I don't know why they just don't ever touch Letitia James. I've never seen them say anything.
Well, like a lot of my investigations, they're always hesitant to cover anything new. And once you kind of embarrass them, once everyone else is covering it and talking about it, they get embarrassed that they're not covering it. They eventually will cover it. So I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, listen, keep up the great work, Joel. It was an honor to have you on, and me and everyone else will be watching. So I hope everyone goes to Gateway Pundit and follows Joel as he continues his work on Letitia James. Thank you very much, Joel, for coming on.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks, Sal.
Thank you. So, folks, you heard it there. There's a lot on Tish James. I mean, I just thought we have, her hanging around these shady characters. It seems that she is one of the shady characters herself in the history of this stuff. And again, she's there at this nightclub with all this mishigas going around. There's human trafficking reported. Nobody's doing anything. Oh, wait a minute. She's been, campaign finance stuff. We have mortgage fraud. She's married to her father. Just so you understand, folks, she actually has a sibling that was in the New York City Police Department. Did a full career, too. And you wouldn't know. Very few people or some people will know about this because I think she went to an NYPD event with a sister once. It's a sister. It's a female, but complete opposite. Great person. You'd say, what happened there? How did that happen with completely two different opposites? But so I wanted to end the show. Usually it's always something crazy that I say, but I'm going to actually bring something nice, something to the forefront here. So out here in sunny Florida, South Florida, there's a sport that's pretty popular, was made famous on the show Miami Vice, which was a cop show. And it's called highlight. And what you say highlight is a sport that came from overseas. It made it big out here in Florida. It was all the way in Connecticut. It's been in Vegas. It was pretty popular until I believe in the mid 90s or late 80s, there was an incident where they said that they were rigging the games. There was a point in Miami where 16,000 people would come to see the game. So I'm going to show you, this is something I always go to. This Friday night, it's going to be at Magic City Fronton, which is in Hialeah. That's my friend's team, the Chargers. We're playing the Devils, and the highlight Chargers, the lifestyle Chargers versus the Devils. And the Devils is also owned by another person I know very well. You may know him. His name is Mafio. He's a singer and artist. And the Chargers is owned by my friend Miguel, who is lifestyle_Miami on Instagram. You can check that out. Here are the standings for the league. And right now we're in fourth place as the Chargers. And there's a championship. There's been 6 of them so far. We are the reigning champions as the Chargers. I will be there. It's a fun time to be at this place. I really want people, if you can, you go to their website. They also have their World Highlight, I believe, on X, and World Highlight League on YouTube. You could watch this every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. They have games. Friday's the live one. It starts at 7 p.m. Of course, it's on ESPN3 also, so you can watch that. And you never know who could show up. I mean, Lawrence Taylor, former linebacker for the New York Giants, he's come. El Duque, former pitcher for the Yankees and also the Mets, World Series champ, he's been there. Hector Lombard, UFC fighter, he's been there. Jorge Masvidal, he used to own the Devils at one point, but he's been there. The one and only Roger Stone, he's been there, and he got the biggest ovation there, by the way. He's the only person that people from the fans actually came down to. They wanted autographs and pictures, and they were going crazy in this. So this is a fun thing, and I think people, to take a break from everything, from seeing how corrupt the world is or how bad New York City could be, you could take a break and go, what's this? Because usually sports was something that kind of like separated us from going crazy. It's that time to take a break, and then you could kind of, associate with some new people, and there's different things that we might find and, be in common with. There's different discussions, and I think Highlight is something that brings people together. It's a fun time. Check it out tomorrow, 7 o'clock, ESPN 3 on YouTube, World Highlight League. Also, if you can, go to the website. I think it's worldhighlight.com for the league and information. Also, follow lifestyle_Miami for the Chargers to see what they're up to on Instagram. They also have their own Instagram account as well. But Highlight's a fun sport, so if you can, check it out. Take a breather. As crazy as Eric Adams sounds, as crazy as the latest executive order that President Trump does, whatever's going on in the streets in LA, take a breather and watch this, and you might say, wow, this is a relaxing time. So with that, I'm going to say tomorrow, 8:05 live, Finest Unfiltered. We're going to have a weekly roundtable. It'll be Eric Dim, John McCarry, myself, and Marlon Bethel. We'll be talking about all the latest that's happened in the last week. Whatever new headline comes out, we'll be breaking that down. Of course, check out Finest Unfiltered Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8:05 live. And the Executive Perspective, which I like to personally thank Ron and Rob. They were both on. They both host the show. This is it's a happening show, folks. If you are big on law enforcement and you want to hear what's going on in the NYPD or rules and regulations, who better to break it down than two executives? So you can check that out, 5:05 on Wednesdays, 17:05 military time. Wednesdays, hopefully they start a different day. They have multiple days because there's a lot of informative stuff there, and they break things down. And of course, if you are on YouTube, please hit the like, share, subscribe button, hit the notification button as well. Also, please, if you can, if you have anything you could give to Eric and his family. Of course, as you know, Eric Dim's son, he's still in this battle. Like I say, brain cancer is nothing to be. It's nothing to play around with. It's very serious. We're hoping that there's a breakthrough. So if you can, you go to the website. Also, go to squad/life.com. You can pick up your shirt, Derek Strong. You could also go to the I forgot where the page was, because there's a lot of people trying to say that they're Eric. There's only one fundraiser. So if you can, please at least buy the shirt and keep Eric and his family in your prayers, as this is still an ongoing battle, and hopefully things could start changing for the better. My heart's always with Eric and your family, and God bless you. So with that, folks, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. To everyone in the comments, if you can, like I said, share this out, repost this yourselves on X, and share it out on YouTube or Rumble or any other platform that you're listening to. So I'm Sal Greco. I hope you all have a good weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday, where we might have a certain political consultant coming on, and we'll be discussing probably some major things that have happened recently in the news in regards to JFK. I'll keep you posted all on that. But until then, this is Sal Greco. I hope everybody has a great day and a good weekend. And don't forget, tomorrow night, if you have the time, check out Highlight on YouTube and also on X and all the platforms that they're streaming on. Thank you all for watching, and may God bless you all.
So this is a biblical moment. When Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them. Are you stupid?